It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and yes, I know I'm a day late, but honestly, I completely forgot to do an episode. That's literally the only reason why there wasn't an episode yesterday. So, short answer, I completely forgot to do one. It was already too late for me to actually do one when I realized that around 3 o'clock last night, and I just had to go to bed. So that was my fault, but back on track now. We're starting a new month, March 4th, 1994. Actually, is that even... Yeah, that's right. March 4th, 1994. 5 movies to look at today, so I've wasted too much of your time already. Let's just get right into it. Let's start off with the first new release of the weekend, the big new release of the weekend, and that is Greedy. I mean, such a star-studded cast there. Not only do you have Michael J. Fox, Kirk Douglas, Nancy Travis, Olivia Dobble from The Wonder Years, Phil Hartman, Ed Begley Jr., but you also had Colleen Camp, Jerry Burns, Kevin McCarthy, Candy Alexander, Tom Mason, Austin Pendleton, Eric Lloyd, the little kid from the Santa Claus, Kirsten Dunst in one of her early film roles. Just a phenomenal cast for this movie, and the trailer was really funny. And it looked like for the first, at least in the first half of the movie, it was really fun. It looked like it was going to be just as the trailer presented itself. It was going to be really funny. It was going to be very inventive. But then the second half happens. This is one of those movies that starts off really strong, and then the movie just kind of falls apart. And I think because of this, I can tell you why I think this movie doesn't really work as well as I thought it was going to. I think because they took a concept that should be really silly. The trailer was pretty much trying to sell itself as kind of a slapstick comedy, a slapstick ensemble comedy, but it just takes itself way too seriously once we get to the second act of the movie. And then by the third act, they just really, really fall apart. Like, I don't know what happened in between those last compared to the first half of the movie and from the second half on, because man, this movie really lost the point altogether after that. And it was a shame too, because this movie had so much going for it in the first half, but a lot of the funny stuff you saw there in the trailer, there really wasn't anything that funny. There wasn't really anything that dark. I'm not expecting like a hard dark comedy, but you could have thrown in a little bit of black comedy elements to it. I mean, this is the same guy that did My Cousin Vinny, the director Jonathan Lynn. This is written by Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel, who also wrote City Slickers and why am I forgetting the other movie they did? A League of Their Own. That's what I was thinking of. And they also did Mr. Saturday Night. So there is a good writing team here and a good director here. Just not very good execution. Like I said, the first half of the movie really funny. Actually shows off what the trailer kind of promised you, but after that, it just kind of falls apart. There's just nothing really all that funny. It really lands into sitcom territory in terms of how they resolve this. It's not really that enjoyable. It's a movie that really slacks off big time in the second half, and you just wonder what went wrong here. Like, why did they think they had to go in this direction? And like I said, it's a shame because this movie clearly has some ambition going to it, and it was funny for the first maybe about, I don't know, maybe about 45 minutes of the movie, and then that second half happens, and the movie just like falls off just like that. And yeah, it's a shame. There was a lot of potential there. It started off strong, then just fell off a cliff. That's pretty much all you can say about Greedy, a movie that high ambitions just didn't stick the landing in the end. It's a shame too. So with that said, let's move on to the next movie, and that is Charlie Sheen and Christy Swanson in The Chase. The first half of that trailer alone is just stuff that you've seen so many times in generic action movie trailers. Like, you've got the guy on the phone threatening somebody else on there. Like, you've got the people that end up getting together. You know what it kind of reminded me of? Does anyone remember that when the disaster ride was at Universal Studios and they had that fake trailer with a rock in there? It reminded me somewhat of that, except that one was obviously a fake trailer, but this one was supposed to be taken seriously, and there's just nothing in here. Like, their attempts at comedy aren't really all that good, despite the fact that you got two pretty good actors in Charlie Sheen and Christy Swanson in here. They really don't work off each other here. I think the movie tries a little too hard to be like the 90s version of Bonnie and Clyde. Like, they're trying to be the new generation Bonnie and Clyde, and it's just like, it just doesn't fly. It just doesn't really get anything going, because you could pretty much predict everything that's going to happen. You could predict the jokes, you could predict the characters, and it was a movie that I think was clearly trying to sell more of its soundtrack, which had like a alternative music aspect to it with bands like Bad Religion, NOFX, Rollins Band, even Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers shows up in here, and you see him later on in the trailer, but I just didn't get anything out of this movie. It just wasn't funny. The action wasn't really all that good. It was like very mediocre, to say the least. Um, I guess if one thing is going for this movie is that they kind of have a decent satire about the television news industry and how we overhype stuff, and how they try to dramatize everything so they have bigger ratings for it. But it doesn't really do it all that well. I mean, I give it credit for at least doing that, but I've seen this done so much better, but in other movies. But that's pretty much all I got for you on this one. The chase really was not really all that interesting. So, with that said, let's move on to the next movie, and that is Gina Davis starring in Angie. A little word of advice: if they're talking about how important the movie is and how it's a special movie and it's supposed to be a big Oscar contender, and yet it comes out in early March, chances are it's not really all that special. And yeah, Angie is definitely not that special. It's a movie that really, like, even for somebody as great as Gina Davis, she can't save this movie. It's a movie that's just a melodramatic movie that just feels so manipulative, trying to get those cheap emotional aspects out of you, and it's just Oscar baiting. It's trying to give her another Oscar worthy performance, and it doesn't work. There's nothing exciting about this character. There's nothing exciting about this story whatsoever. If the only thing you could say about this movie is that it has three of the stars of The Sopranos in it: James Gandolfini, Ada Turturro, and also Michael Rispoli. If that's the best thing you can say about this movie, then chances are that this movie was never going to work for the beginning, and you could probably see why it came and went, and yeah, you could definitely see why. It's just not an intriguing story. It's Oscar baiting. It's trying to be that type of movie where it's gonna be an awards darling, and it's nothing like that. Like, it really isn't anything like that. That's pretty much all I got for you on that one. So that's Angie. On to the next movie, and guess what? Orion Pictures is got to get all those movies out there while they're filing for bankruptcy, and here's yet another one, China Moon. So yeah, filmed in 1991, but shelved for 3 years because, of course, like I said before, Orion Pictures was going through bankruptcy, and these movies were getting released at various points in time, because really nobody thought anybody was going to go see them, and this is one of those movies that maybe could have been an awards contender if it wasn't trying to be so manipulative or trying to overact too much for an Academy Award. I mean, you got Ed Harris and Madeline Stowe in here, and even Madeline Stowe's trying to. I don't know if they did this on purpose or not, but there's a scene in that trailer where it literally looks like her character from Revenge. I mean, it's basically almost the same thing except for just small little differences, and there's nothing exciting about this mystery whatsoever. It's a movie that really. You could probably see why it was on the shelf, but yeah, it just didn't work. It's a movie that really did not work at all. It's not a very exciting mystery. You can pretty much tell what it's going to be, and despite a promising cast, it doesn't work. It's a movie that you look at and see. Even if you weren't going into bankruptcy, you could probably see why Orion would never put this out in theaters unless they desperately needed to make money. And sure enough, that turns out to be the case here. So that's China Moon. And with that said, on to the last movie, and that is Sirens. I haven't seen this movie, so I can't really comment on it too much. But I will say that this is actually one of the three movies that kind of brought the attention of Hugh Grant to most people across America here, because he had three movies that came out over the course of 3 weeks. This film, and then the next week we have Four Weddings and a Funeral, and then the following week we have Roman Polanski's Bitter Moon. So he had these three movies that kind of jumped his star power internationally, and the other part of his career wasn't always off to the best starts, but we'll delve into that when we delve into 95, because that's when that thing happened that I'm going to be talking about. But other than that, like I said, I haven't seen this movie, but Sam Neill is in here, Elle Macpherson in one of her a few acting roles she did during this time period. Portia de Rossi from Ally McBeal and Arrested Development is in here. Ben Mendelsohn as well. That's pretty much all I know about it. Like I said, I haven't really seen it. I haven't heard a lot of good things about it, though, so it's probably not one I'm going to rush out to see right away, but it is what it is, at least from what I know right now. So maybe one day I'll definitely check it out, but not really my palette to actually look at right now by the movies I want to check out. But anyway, that's Sirens for you. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll look at 5 more movies, including Nicolas Cage and Shirley MacLaine in Guarding Tess, Paul Hogan in Lightning Jack, Dennis Leary in his first feature film debut, The Ref, or his leading feature film debut, I should say, the previously mentioned 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and the Coen Brothers' The Hudsucker Proxy, probably their most underrated movie, and we'll delve into that next time around. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.